Oh my gosh.
And it was just like, so by this time I'm like...
You're like weeping.
I like mascara's coming down on the keyboard, like it's just terrible.
This video features an interview with Pat Flynn. If you're an online entrepreneur at all or interested in marketing or podcasting, I'm sure you've heard of him. He is an international keynote speaker, a renowned podcaster, and the creator behind the Smart Passive Income empire. He's launched multiple passive income projects and businesses, and he explains the result of each one on his website, along with transparent monthly income reports showing how he's brought in over $2.1 million in the last 12 months alone. He has been featured in the New York Times and Forbes magazine for his accomplishments. He's spoken at large conferences around the world. He's grown a YouTube channel to over 124,000 subscribers, and his top-ranked business podcast, the Smart Passive Income Podcast, has earned over 25 million downloads. It's true that Flynn was an early adopter in the online influencer, expert, and podcasting space. But I asked him straight up how he would tackle these things if he was starting today. So if you are an aspiring blogger, podcaster, online entrepreneur, or you just want to learn more about how to balance giant goals with your family life, you will love this candid interview with Pat Flynn.
I'm Kelsey Humphreys here with the Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. I know most of you guys know him. You were an architect and you'd worked your way up and he was successful in his career and then you got laid off. This was 2008?
Yes, June 17th, 2008 is my let go day.
So you're let go and it's like, what? And then you realize that you had been putting out your study materials for a test. What's the test called?
It's called the LEED exam, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Super niche in the architecture space. Nobody really knows about it. But I knew a lot of information about it because I studied for it.
Right.
And to help me study, I was taking notes. I was posting those notes on just a little website I created so I can help my coworkers too. And then I passed that exam and I just let that site sit there. And little did I know that site had been growing massively over time, kind of under my nose without me even knowing about it. Thousands of people a day were checking it out. And it wasn't until I discovered this world of online business and entrepreneurship and got a lot of support along the way too, because my initial thought was like, who am I to even talk about this stuff? Like, I'm not an expert. Why should I even do this? But I had no choice. Nobody was hiring any architects at the time. I had nothing else to do. I was about to get married. Like, it was just crazy. I moved back in with my parents. And so it was a big struggle. I went through a lot of depression and just kind of, well, what am I going to do next? Because I had done everything the way I was supposed to. I got good grades in school, joined all the extracurriculars, got letters of recommendations from everybody, etc. Got to a great college, even in the corporate world was accelerating, and I was like the youngest person to be a job captain at the architecture firm. And even still, I got let go. And it wasn't until I made that mental shift of, okay, well, I need to take control of my own life. I need to actually do something that where I fail, if I were to fail, it would be my own fault, not something anybody else can touch. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this online business thing and see what happens. The day I put Google Analytics on my site, I was just expecting, just a few hits like from my friends and myself. And I saw that there are thousands of people a day going to that website. And I looked in deeper to see where this traffic was coming from. 75% of it was coming from Google. And I was like, what? Like, how did Google, I didn't know how keywords and Google and search worked, but they put my stuff at the top of the search engines for these keywords because I was the only one really posting about it.
Right.
And then secondly, there were all these links from other people who were studying and in forums. And even I saw some of my links in the United States Green Building Council chapter websites. Like, they were like, go to this resource, study for it. And then I turned on the comments, and that's when things got crazy.
Oh.
Pat, how do I do this? How do I do this? For me, I didn't know all the answers, but I found those answers and gave it back to them. And I slowly, but kind of rather quickly, became seen as the expert in that space. Even though I barely passed that exam, I was the expert because I was the one out there really trying to help people. And then in October of 2008, I published an ebook. It was called the LEED AP Exam Walkthrough. It was $19.95, and I sold it on PayPal on my website. And I remember I launched that at 2 a.m, and I woke up at 6 a.m. and I was like, no sales. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. But it was in the morning, so I kind of gave myself a little bit more time. 8:30 a.m., I check my email, nothing. And I'm like devastated because nobody's buying it. And I have all this traffic coming to the website. I'm like, I'm just going to go find another architecture job. At 8:40 a.m., I get a notification from PayPal, and it says I had sold my first book. And it just blew me away. So much so that I actually was starting to like hyperventilate because I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And my initial thought was, oh, this is great. What if this person hates it? What if they want a refund? Like all this like negative stuff that comes in when you're doing something weird and uncomfortable and different. So I had to go outside for a walk. 15 minutes later, I get back, I check my email. I had made another sale while I was on a walk. And that just started this whole journey for me.
And then you ended up making like $8,000 off of that book, right?
$7,955.08.
That's very specific.
And
that's amazing. So here's what I know people think about passive income, right? Everything's automated and it's great, but I want to talk about like the passive part is later.
Much.
So that first year, you know, what did that hustle look like? You're about to get married. You're living with your parents. Yes, you did make that almost $8,000, but you know, what was the timeline? How long did you have to be patient and build what is now your online empire?
This is how you know you're talking to a real entrepreneur, somebody who knows that there's a backstory that requires a lot of work to this. Because on the surface, it sounds like it happened overnight, and it definitely did not. Most success stories, there's always a non-overnight success part of it. And there was a lot of hours a day just posting information online, doing the research, really trying to get involved in forums and communities. I mean, that was another component of my success, being seen as an expert, because I was there communicating with people in architecture forums. And then by the nature of just giving and trying to help as many people as possible, people were trying to find out where they could get more information from me. And that's when they got to my website, and that's when I began to build a relationship with them. Another important part of it was just being myself, being real, not trying to be like some corporate test helper company, but I was just Pat Flynn, a guy who took the exam just like you guys are about to take it. And I think what really showed me that that was the right way to do it was a few months later, when my income started to grow, I was making $15,000, $20,000 a month. I had raised the price of my book also. I added an audio guide, all this kind of stuff. In May of 2009, the United States Green Building Council, the people who write the exam questions, they came out with their own guide. I think they saw how successful mine was, and they were like, ooh, we can make our own. And I thought I was done. Like, why would people buy from me when they can get the questions and help from the people who write the questions for the exam? I thought I was screwed. I was already looking for another architecture job. And what happened was I actually made more money and more sales in that month than I had ever made. And I couldn't understand why. So I actually asked my customers, like, why did you purchase from me? Just being really upfront with them, but not the United States Green Building Council. And the path was, they all said, oh, we didn't know there were study guides until we got an email from the United States Green Building Council. And then we started to research for other guides. And then we saw you. And we'd much rather buy from you because you're just like me, just a few steps ahead. And you have a face, and you have a name, and you have a family, versus like you don't even know who's there. And they thought that would be more real. And so that just taught me to always be myself and put my personality into my stuff and to just be real.
And then that started, or what was the transition to what is now Smart Passive Income, which is kind of what everyone knows you for. And now, if you guys didn't know, on Smart Passive Income, you launch other passive income sites. And then he does these case studies, and he goes into super detail about each one, which is fascinating. But your home base now is Smart Passive Income.
It is. It's definitely grown into something amazing. I actually just created the website just to kind of share everything, because everybody was like, how did you do this? How did you survive the recession in 2008? So I just wanted to share everything. Everything that went right, everything that I wish I had done differently, everything that was not going so well, just so I can help people, because this world was unknown to me, and I knew that it was unknown for many others too. And when I was doing research in internet marketing, all I could find were these people who were giving away 75% of the information and would make me pay for the rest of it. And I was like, I can just share all of it. Like, I'm already making money on this architecture site. Like, why would I need to make more money?
Okay.
But then after a year and a half of doing Smart Passive Income and discovering that I could generate a commission through affiliate marketing by recommending just the tools that I use, then Smart Passive Income started to grow, and people started to see me as this transparent, authentic leader in the internet marketing space. It's kind of sad to say that that is what made me stand out, being honest and authentic. But it was. And so, and also the fact that I'm not like flashing myself in front of Lamborghinis and mansions. Like, I have a 2012 Toyota Sienna, people, like a soccer mom van, and I love it. And like that kind of thing, people want to learn from somebody who's just like them. And so on that site, like you said, I build new businesses now. I've built a website in the security guard training industry, and I just showed the entire process, how I picked that niche, how I built the website, how I created the content, how I monetized it. That site since 2010 has been generating $2,000 a month, and I haven't touched it for 5 years.
Wow.
Another website in the food truck industry I created called foodtrucker.com. That's making a few $1,000s as well through ebooks and other courses. And I just, I've been dabbling in apps and software and all this other stuff just to kind of show people how it works. And I don't know what I'm doing. That's the funny thing. Like, I am just figuring it out just like everybody else. And I'm just there as what I call the crash test dummy of online business.
I love that.
I just like put myself there and I try it. And if it works, great. If not, great. Because I can share with everybody else. Either way, it's a lesson for people who can, get inspired to do it and know that, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fail. It's part of the process. And I can hopefully help you cut down those failures a little bit.
You're also a major keynote speaker now. You're speaking all over the world, and you have multiple books. What's your biggest bread and butter?
Podcasting.
So that's sponsorships on your podcast or selling products through the podcast?
Well, bread and butter in terms of revenue, that's
your
different.
biggest income.
The reason I say podcast is because that, more than anything, has helped me build a real relationship with my audience.
So people find you.
People find me through my podcast. They build a habit of listening to me. Like, I'll go to conferences, and people will be like, Pat, I love your podcast. Like, I love that story you told about how you were 11-pound, 12-ounce baby, which I was.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy.
Mad respect to your mom.
I haven't grown much since then. But like little stories like that they hear on the podcast, like that's what they remember. They can really resonate with that. And even when I was podcasting, only every other week people started to talk about the podcast more than the blog, which I was doing 3 days a week. So that told me that podcasting was great. The podcasting is really important in my revenue model because it builds that relationship, and you need that trust and relationship before any sort of transaction can happen. But when it comes to business models, mostly affiliate marketing. So through these case studies, for example, like how to build a niche site in the security guard training industry, I show people the entire process free, step by step. Some of the things you can do on your own for free, some of the things I use tools to help me, and if you happen to want to use those tools too, here's my affiliate link. By clicking on this affiliate link, I make a little bit of money, and I'm always very honest with that. And if you live in the US, you have to be very honest with that because of the FTC. But people want to give back for the free, valuable information you're giving them, and just simply providing a link that helps you generate an income is a great, easy way for people to want to do that. There's this law of reciprocity that plays a role, which is why my philosophy in business is serve first. Serve first. You will be rewarded as a result of that. Your earnings are a byproduct of how well you serve your audience. And that's been my philosophy. So affiliate marketing has been fantastic. I've generated over $3.5 million through affiliate marketing. But recently, I've been starting to build my own products, courses and software and things like that. Now, I should have probably done that sooner. But I fell in this weird place where I felt that, I was kind of in complacent land with affiliate marketing. I was like, affiliate marketing is great. Like, why should I force more things that my audience should buy? Like, I'm giving everything away for free already. But a couple things happened. One, I realized that building your business directly and only on affiliate marketing models is scary because at any moment in time, those companies, like, I'm relying on them, and they could sever those ties, they could get bought out, or they could die, or whatever. Then my income is gone. Remember, I said I wanted control, and it's a little bit of control, but not that much. So creating your own products can work really well for you. But then the other thing that somebody helped me with was this mindset of like feeling bad about selling. I was not okay with selling, especially because I was generating an income without asking my audience to pay me anything. But my buddy told me, he's like, Pat, you're doing your audience a disservice by not selling to them. And I couldn't understand until he said, well, did you take any online courses when you started? I'm like, yeah, I took one called Internet Business Mastery and a few others, and they were really helpful. And he's like, do you think you would be where you were at today without taking those courses? And I said, man, this guy was right.
Yep.
And I've had a number of other friends who basically say, you can sell and serve at the same time. You can sell and serve at the same time. And that was a huge mindset shift for me. And I've realized now, since selling courses in podcasting and blogging and such, that the results come when you ask people to pay for things because they have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a way to serve. And the third part of it is I'm not taking anything away from the people who are consuming for free. That was the other thing. I'm just simply adding on some things for people. So you
didn't like shut down your blog or take down a bunch of content?
No, that stuff is still there. I'm just adding something else on top of it so that people can, if they want to, and if they can at the time invest in that, they can work with me a little closer.
Yeah. Okay, so you went through a lot.
Sorry.
That's okay. I love your story. So here's the thing. I think a lot of people watching and who dive into, people who are really successful online, right now, the rock stars online were early adopters. I mean, the market is way more saturated now than it was when you started. But there are some things that I think you can teach us. For example, you mentioned, that you were active in forums. So you were really building community and getting out there and showing that you were willing to answer questions, that you had the expertise. How should someone be doing that now? Because now people have even shut down comments on blogs. So would it be Facebook groups, or what do you suggest?
Kind of depends where your audience is. I think you need to find out where your audience is and begin to have conversations with them. A successful business is one that solves problems. And what's really cool about social spaces, people are talking about their problems all the time.
True. All day.
So you can go in there and
Yeah.
talk to those people and say, well, okay, I see you have this problem. Like, what can I do to help you? Or what's something that, is halfway working right now that you wish was working better? That can give you some ideas on, okay, well, what can you do to better serve them? And again, a lot of people start with, I'm going to start a podcast, or I'm going to start a blog, or I'm going to start this or start that. But they're starting not with the problem. They're starting with the platform that they feel like makes sense. You start with the problem, and from there, and those conversations you have, whether it's through DMs or through Skype calls or phone calls or in person, then you can determine, okay, well, what method would be best to serve this person based on the problems and that they're having. Another really great thing to do is niche down. A lot of people try to build a business to serve everybody. When you build a business to serve everybody, you're actually serving nobody, because you're kind of doing everything halfway, right? It's like if you are interested in getting running shoes because you're going to run a marathon or something, are you going to go to the shoe pavilion that has running shoes, casual shoes, Crocs and Uggs and all these other things? Do you think you're going to get real running advice from a person there who knows running shoes, like that's their expertise? No, right? You're going to go to the running shoe store that has those treadmills that film you in slow motion so you can make sure that you don't break your ankles after 26.2 miles, right? And so that's what you want to be. When you go to the mall, how many different kinds of shoe stores are there, right? There's a running shoe store. There's actually one called the Walking Company. There's one for Crocs. There's one for casual. There's one for going out and clubbing at night. There's another one for, basketball, like all that kind of stuff. So how can you become that specialty? Right, where when a person is talking with somebody else about that topic, you are the resource that pops in their head. And that's what you want to become. And yes, you're narrowing down how many people you can serve, but by narrowing down how many are in that market, you can actually serve more, because you become that go-to resource for them. The riches are in the niches.
Yeah. So today, one of the things that's still really relevant is content. And for you, you're a prolific creator, because if you think about it, that's what started your whole thing, is that you had been putting out content about your test and studying and what you'd learned. Then you did that with Smart Passive Income. Then you start a podcast. Create. So that seems exhausting. What is your advice for people who want to create content? How can we be strategic? Do you have ways to maximize your time? Are you batching? Are you time blocking? Tell us all of your secrets.
Yes, so batching is really important, but even before that, planning out what it is you want to write about or podcast about or video about ahead of time is key. Because I got to a point in 2013 where I stopped blogging and I stopped podcasting because I was just so overwhelmed with the process of creation. It's a very overwhelming, time-consuming thing. And what took up most of my time was trying to figure out what I was going to write. I would open up a blank sheet. After I hated to hit publish on my blog, because I knew that at the moment I hit publish, I had to start thinking about what was coming next. And because I didn't plan ahead, I would always struggle with that. And I'd see that blinking cursor on my Google Docs or WordPress, and it would just stare me in the face like, hey, what are you going to write about? You have no idea, don't you? That's what I felt like it was saying.
You, yeah.
Yes, it was. So I go through these moments and meetings with myself and my team ahead of time to plan out, for example, what's the content going to be for the next quarter. We plan around what products that we want to launch. We plan around what themes there might be, happening around that month or something, and that allows us to narrow our focus for what it is that we should write. And so we have this really cool editorial calendar that we use it's just a Google Sheet to keep track and have all those, we have all the blank spaces for each and every, calendar date for publication, and we just fill those in over time. And now my week is broken down like this. So Monday is my writing day. Okay. So when I wake up on Monday, I know that that's all I'm focusing on is writing. On Monday, I wake up, and when it's time to work, I open up the Google Doc that has already been titled for that particular post, because again, all this is set up ahead of time. I open that Google Doc knowing that that's what I'm going to write about, and already in there's a few bullet points and things just to get me started. So I'm never ever thinking to myself, what am I going to be doing right now?
Yeah.
I have some stuff to get me going. And again, knowing that Monday is my writing day, I can be in that sort of mindset to write.
Yeah.
We don't schedule anything else during that day. I just write. Tuesday is my recording day. So I record podcasts on Tuesday, and I batch process those. So I'll record 4 or 5 episodes in one day, which takes care of the whole month, right? I can do a whole month in one day, and it helps when I can just go, okay, Tuesday, recording, boom, done, and be in that mindset. And then Wednesday is my meetings day, so that's when I schedule meetings. If people come to San Diego, if you want to hang out with me, try to make it on a Wednesday, because that's when I put that in there.
Insider tip, guys.
Yeah. And that's when I have team meetings scheduled, etc. And then Thursday and Friday are sort of cleanup days. Oftentimes those are just days off, but sometimes those are, okay, I didn't finish that blog post I wanted to write, so I'm going to write and finish that off. But because it's structured that way and it's batch process and I time block, like you said, it's key, especially when you have a family and there's certain things that, like, in communicating with your spouse, really important.
Right.
That's like number one, just to kind of have them understand why and when things are happening. The why part's really important. But then also making sure that on the other side of it, you're giving time back to them. So I'm basically talking about my wife and how amazing she is at, for example, watching the kids when I'm out at a conference, or knowing it's recording day on Tuesday, she's taking care of the kids, picking them up from school. But Thursday and Friday, that's my job. And so we kind of balance things out that way. And speaking of balance, that was one of the hardest things, is just kind of, with all the things we have going on, all the extra content that we want to write and engagement that we want to have on social media, it's a struggle. And too many people try to have perfect balance. And perfect balance is not possible. Because when you think about a scale, right? It's going shifting back and forth. Perfect balance is one moment in that entire back and forth.
True.
And if you only strive for that perfect balance, you're never going to be happy.
Yeah.
So my advice would be to realize that it is going to go back and forth, but always just try to keep it from teetering too far over to one side. And that mindset, in terms of how I structure things and how April, my wife, and I kind of approach life and scheduling, it has been really, really helpful.
And now you kind of have that down to an art. And I love talking to the few rock star entrepreneurs that have little kids, because I feel like there aren't very many. Either their kids are kind of grown, or there's a lot of people who are single. So I love talking about this. Those first couple years, like, that's when you have to grind it out. A lot of people watching are still in that stage. And if you're a mom or a parent, or building a business with your spouse, or you're trying to tag team, how did you guys find your rhythm those first couple years?
Well, I first had to find a rhythm with myself, because I was so used to, before we had kids, just having a lot of time. And then that time goes away, right? So what was really interesting, though, is when we had kids, I became a lot more productive. And the reason was because I became super hyper efficient. And part of what helped me with that was realizing that if I was wasting time on something, I wasn't just taking time away from that project. I was actually taking time away from my kids. Yeah. And that's a scary thing, because the kids, as you most likely know, grow super fast. And I don't want to miss any moment. And so realizing that if I go down like a YouTube rabbit hole, or like, just on the dark side of Facebook or whatever, like, that's time I'm taking away from my kids. So that helps me stay focused. And then it also helps me realize what my priorities are. So within all the different projects I have, I make sure to prioritize them. So I know which ones to work on first and to focus on. And then when I focus on that, nothing else matters. But at the same time, I realize that when I focus, I am more able to get something done quicker, which allows me to, again, spend more time with the kids. So the kids are just the most important motivator for me. I'm not saying if you don't have babies, like, to be productive, go and have kids, but
it does help. You have 2 hours during nap time, you're like a ninja.
Yes.
During those 2 hours.
Exactly.
It is true. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about, if you were starting over right now, so it's 2017, you've just been laid off from your successful architecture job, and you were going to go through this whole journey, what are some big things you would do differently this time around?
I would definitely, first of all, if I were to get a website up, start an email list sooner. That was a big mistake. I started 2 websites. Even my lead exam website business didn't have an email list. So when I came out with like a second product, I didn't have even my previous customers, I didn't have the systems in place to go and email them and let them know I had something that can help them even more. With Smart Passive Income, I didn't start an email list for a whole year and a half. And it crushes me, because that's people who I could potentially serve, right? Yeah. So starting an email list sooner. Also realizing how great it is to hire help. And when I started, I don't know if this is like a guy thing, but I want to do everything myself. Like, I don't ask for directions, none of that.
Right.
And I was prideful about that I could do everything myself. Like, I was on YouTube late at night trying to be a CSS JavaScript expert. Like, because I remember one time I was trying to move an image from the right side of the page to the left side of the page. It took me 8 hours, and I still didn't do it right. And I tell April, she sees that I'm frustrated. She goes, "What's wrong, babe?" And I'm like, "I'm just trying to do this thing that should be easy, but it's not." And I'm just pulling my hair out. And she goes, "Well, why don't you call my friend Mel? He does web development. He'll help you out." I talked to him on the phone. It took him 5 minutes.
Yep.
And he's like, "Who coded this site? It's disgusting." And I'm like, "I coded it, but okay." And it made me realize that, like, there are people out there who can do things much faster and better.
Yeah.
And that I was just completely wasting my time. And it wasn't until then that I started to put a value on my time that helped me realize that it's okay to have hired help.
Yeah.
And then I hired people to do the voiceover for my book that sold on my lead exam website. I then later hired people for more administrative things. And now I'm like looking for anything and everything I can hire people for because it's just so opening and freeing to have that extra time back. And one of the biggest things for me was finding somebody to edit and create my podcast. I did all that myself, and I thought it was something that nobody else could do like me. But of course, once I tried it, they did it better than me, and I had 5 extra hours a week that I could spend time with the kids or whatever.
So you talk about the value of time, then we'll get to the last couple questions. With all the things you have going on, you sit down, you're looking at your week or your month. How do you pick your priorities and then schedule them in strategically? Because a lot of times, like, we know what our priorities are for the quarter or the month, and then we look back and it's like, I spent like way less time on that than I should have. So what's your strategy there?
Yeah, so I always put a ranking system to all the things that I need to do. So the projects I have a sort of level of importance, and I revisit this every single month to determine, okay, is it still important to me, is it not? And that ranking system helps me to do that. There's a book called Essentialism that helps you in your life rank things from 1 to 10. And getting rid of like the 1 to 6s are easy, 1 to 5. Like, that, oh, wow, I'm doing that. I don't need to do that. It's gone. It's the 7s and 8s that are really difficult to walk away from, because they kind of will work and they're kind of great, but they're not 9s and 10s. And I always try to make sure that I have a 9 or 10 thing that I'm doing that trumps all those other ones that are on my list too. And I also know that, just because I'm not doing it now doesn't mean it will never get done. That's big on like a lot of the ideas, because I have like squirrel syndrome, right? Like bright light syndrome. Like, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Yep.
Prioritizing those is important, but also keeping track of them. I think writing them down. I have a little shoebox with Post-it notes of all my ideas, knowing that I can go back there when I want. Like, those ideas aren't gone, but here are the things I need to work on right now.
Love that. I knew he would have a great answer. Okay, so looking back over your journey now, that's been amazing. You're having 6-figure months, and I mean, you're crushing it, and you're speaking, you're keynote, you're everywhere. Everybody loves you. What's been the worst part and the best part of your journey?
So the worst part about it is that it's difficult to turn it off. Meaning that when I'm at home, I could always go into my office and, answer more emails, or I have more projects to work on that I know I have things to do with, and I can do them if I wanted to. But it helps that I have the kids at home, and my wife and I we're there together. We understand that the kids are a priority, and we time block when we are spending time together, and that's really important, because if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
And that's family time too. So having a schedule has helped me with that very difficult thing of turning things off. Like, it's funny because we're like, oh, screw the 9 to 5, like, let's get rid of the 9 to 5 job. But the nice thing about 9 to 5 is at 5 o'clock, you can check out mentally, right?
Yeah, like, I'm not thinking about it anymore. Exactly.
So putting those things into place for your own business, even though you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur, is really, really important. Another thing for me that has helped with that, it's still difficult. Like, it's not perfect. Like, I still, especially with the phone, my gosh, it's so easy to just, like, I can continue, and then you just don't even know it every once in a while. But another thing that's helped is having a physical space where work and only work gets done. So in the beginning, it was this little niched corner in the kitchen, and then we moved out of that apartment, and then I finally had my own office space, which was just a bedroom. And having that space where I could close the door.
Yeah.
And I know that when it's closed, I can mentally check out. But the worst thing is just catching myself in those moments where I'm like blending those two things. It's not fair to my wife, it's not fair to my kids, and I'm just still trying to improve on that. The best thing about it is, besides like the fact that I can be an example for my kids to show them that they have options, that it's okay to fail, that fear is a part of the process, that meeting people and building relationships is like the best thing in the world. Like being an example for them has just been so fun, especially because I have a 5 and a 7-year-old now, and they're in that stage where they're like, logic finally starts to kick in.
Yes, yeah.
And so they can say, oh, if this happens, then this will happen. So teaching them those things has been really fun. But I think the coolest thing is the stories of people who have consumed my content in one way or another and how it's helped them. That to me is just mind-boggling, knowing that somebody on the other side of the world has been affected by the work that I do, like in my home office. There was this one guy, his name is Michał from Poland, and he wrote me this email, and I wasn't going to read it because I opened it up and it was like 50,000 words, like it was so long, and I don't have time for that. But the subject line was, "Pat, you saved my life. Please read this." So of course I'm reading it.
Yeah.
He's telling me about this story about when he broke both of his legs in a terrible snowboarding accident, and he was just depressed, bedridden, and he found my podcast. And he said that by listening to my podcast, he felt that I was there to help encourage him. And there was one episode that he listened to where I was talking about goal setting. And when you set goals, set nearly impossible goals, because therefore, even if you miss that one, you still go really, really high. So he was, with 2 broken legs, deciding that he was going to run a marathon in a 1.5 years after recovery.
Wow.
And he said every day he listened to my podcast. And of course, by this time I'm reading and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's like, this is crazy. And at the end, he shares this picture of him crossing the finish line of the Warsaw full marathon, and you can like look at his legs. There's like plates holding them together. He ran the whole thing, and he's holding up a sign in Polish, and he translates it. It says, "Thank you, God. Thank you to his wife and kids, and thank you, Pat Flynn."
Oh my gosh.
And it was just like, so by this time
That's
I'm like,
you're like weeping.
I like mascara's coming down on the keyboard, like it's just terrible.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And it came at the right time, because I almost wanted to give up on my podcast then, because
Really?
I just wasn't feeling like it was actually doing anything for me.
Amazing.
But then I knew that there are people out there in this world who are being affected by this who I don't even know about.
Wow.
Like this whole thing was happening for a 1.5 years without me knowing it. So what's really cool is I get to meet him for the first time in 2 weeks.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
What a cool story. All right, so looking back, and to those watching, I usually say at the very beginning, but now I kind of want to transition. Maybe they're in their first 2 or 3 years, okay, entrepreneur, and they're feeling a little stuck, maybe a little lost, things aren't going very well. What's your number one piece of advice for them?
It would be to figure out what is working out of all that and just double down on that. Because we try all these different tactics, and it's great to see all these different tactics, but there's probably stuff you're doing that you're not doing enough of because you're focusing on all these other things. So focus on what is working and optimize before you start to kind of add all these other elements into it. That's a very common struggle that I see with especially first and second year entrepreneurs.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you so much. We'll be right back after this with Fast Facts. All right, guys, I wanted to ask you, if you're enjoying this interview, if you would show some love. You could give it a thumbs up. You can take a screen grab and give me a shout out on Instagram. You can share it with a friend who you know will love it. The Kelsey Show is brought to you totally free for 2 reasons. One, I work my face off as a motivational entertainer. I'm an international keynote speaker. You can actually book me to speak at your event, your conference, your meetup, your book club, your kid's baptism. I'm here for it. Just go to KelseyHumphreys.com. There's a link there on the homepage. And 2, viewers like you who support me by buying my books and limited edition swag and all that kind of stuff that can be found on the shop page. Again, just go to KelseyHumphreys.com and you'll find it there. Let's get to the goods on how we take insights from such a super successful person and apply it to our, everyday lives. So here are my top few keys to success for the rest of us
From my interview with Pat Flynn. In order to do what he did and become an influencer in your space, you're going to have to, number 1, build up your track record. Remember that he spent hours and hours building his first successful passive income project before he could start Smart Passive Income and become an authority on passive income. A lot of times we want to skip these steps, and we simply cannot skip the first step of building something noteworthy in your space. Then number 2, plan ahead for growth. If you want to be an influencer, you know you're going to want to branch out into public speaking, you're going to start podcasting and guest posting and things like that. Make sure you start to plan ahead in creating content and working on your marketing. Just having blocked time and planning to batch isn't enough. You need to actually sit down and figure out a whole content calendar for yourself so that you don't keep getting stuck or burnt out. Number 3, expand out. Once you have your foundation built and you're starting to put out content, then you can expand, whether that's through a podcast, which he said was one of the most important things he has in his entire business, because that's how people connect with him. Or you may want to do it through strategic Instagram stories or live streaming or a YouTube channel. Number 4, gather up email addresses. You guys, if you want to have an online business, you have got to be doing this in some way, shape, or form. All of my online entrepreneurial guests and influencers and online celebrities talk about this. Get those emails. Number 5, block out time on your calendar. We already talked about content creation and planning, but what I'm talking about is what he and a lot of my other guests say, which is if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't get done, which includes time for self-care, time for family. Remember, he said the worst thing about the entire journey that he's had, which has been amazing, is that it's hard to turn off. And I know a lot of you guys with big goals and dreams can relate to that. So make sure that you're blocking off things on your calendar, setting alerts on your phone, and having alarms go off to make sure that what you want to get done with your family and yourself and household chores, stuff that's outside of your business, actually gets done. Number 6, focus in on who you are and why you're doing this. I am so happy to report that Pat Flynn, refreshingly, is just as approachable and down to earth in person as he seems online. Remember, I was interviewing him at FinCon, which is a massive conference, and he was the keynote speaker, and he was just walking around by himself with his backpack on, totally chill, happy to take selfies. He didn't have an entourage. He wasn't hanging out in the speaker lounge, not talking to people. He was just being himself out, ready to serve, ready to answer questions. So make sure you find a way to stay grounded and stay true to yourself, stay authentic, and really be you and serve who you want to serve. Why did you start this in the first place? Try and remember all those things as you grow.
All right, we are back with Pat Flynn and Fast Facts. I will tell you, no one is ever fast. Ever. So don't feel pressure. I mean, that's the idea, but usually
I'll do my best.
Ramble on.
As you can tell, I like to talk a lot.
No pressure. Okay, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Scrabble or charades?
Charades.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Wine or beer?
Wine.
Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles.
What is your coffee order at Starbucks?
Dark coffee. Nothing in it.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Pretty Little Liars.
Ooh, that is a good answer. Favorite snack?
Almonds.
Favorite cereal?
None.
Favorite music right now?
Hip hop.
Biggest pet peeve?
Slow drivers.
What would your wife say is her biggest pet peeve that you do?
So what my wife thinks
like the thing that annoys her most
her?
that you do, yeah.
Gosh, I tell the same stories over and over again at like different parties and stuff.
I feel like you're not alone. What is the wallpaper on your phone?
My son, when he was 2, holding a basketball, looking up at a 10-foot rim.
Oh, that's good. What is the last thing you remember Googling?
Oh, gosh. Something related to a restaurant. Like, what's the best? Oh, it was, what kind of food is Dallas known for?
Favorite book?
The One Thing, Gary Keller and Jay Papasan.
Recent book?
It is Shoe Dog, about the story of Nike. It's really good.
Favorite fiction book?
Harry Potter.
One word you're guilty of saying too often?
Awesome.
Last vacation you took?
Blackberry Farms in Tennessee.
Hobby, if you had one, or do you have one?
Golf.
Awesome. All right, and tell us, what is your next pursuit?
So my next pursuit is, I'm right in the middle of it right now, online courses. and I have an online course coming out about affiliate marketing soon, and next year I'm going to be adding workshops on top of them. So for anybody who wants that course content in a much shorter time period, in a more intimate environment, I'm going to be holding workshops in San Diego, and that's something that is scaring me to death, which means it's probably something I should do.
Yes, I love it. And where can everyone find you?
SmartPassiveIncome.com.